Hey everyone, welcome to Fiveable. And yes, we're in AP World Modern today, and we're going to talk about changing religions. And it's one of those central topics in AP World you want to learn more about. And before we start, we have a poll in the crowdcast bar below. There should be two that you should answer right now. The first one is like, which time period is your class currently studying? So I see two people voting on early modern, which is good, which aligns with our pace today. So that's good to hear. And the second poll is, which textbook does your class use? So we have a couple of options here. Just pick the best one. We're trying to gauge here. We're trying to make your learning experience in the future the best. So don't forget to answer those polls. All right, going back to presentation. So once again, we're going to go over religion today. So before we start, quick plug, we have a Fiveable Instagram. I know you guys have Instagram or Twitter or YouTube accounts, so go follow those. We have good resources. We have good memes. Yes, memes, I know. We have live updates, like in our Instagram stories. We have a lot of updates on when the next stream is going to be, so you want to keep that in mind. This stream, talking about changing religions. So we're gonna do a brief overview and periodization because we're throwing these periods around. What's early modern? What makes this period a medieval period? What makes this period an early modern? What makes today the present? So we're gonna talk about that and the key events that are gonna happen there. We have our player lineup. So it's basically our overview, like all these events that tie in an early modern period that are connected to religion. I'm gonna do an overview on each of them that you'll understand. And yeah, and of course, this is what you guys are all of you guys want. We have practice questions. We have multiple choice. We have a short answer question there. So you know, get your brain going. All right. So also, if you have any questions, just go down to ask the question bar or say hi to the chat, or just use those tools. All right. So looking at the map here from Freemanpedia, which is also another good resource. This is what the world map is at by 1450. So you can see the flag of Portugal or Spain representing like the Americas. So you may or may not know that Christopher Columbus just explored America. All those Spanish conquistadors just explored America. They conquered all the natives. You can see in the Middle East, in the middle here, you can see the Islamic empires going full blast. You can see them Istanbul, the Ottoman Empire, taking over the Mediterranean coast, Europe. We also see a shred. We see India here with the Mughal Empire, which is just another Islamic empire. We're gonna go over. You see China, Beijing is pretty much vast over there, and you can see Southeast Asia over there being controlled by the Dutch. So, and Russia, of course, expanding before what we know today is Russia. So it's just important to like know like the general geography, what's going on. It's not like we're America. It's not like at this time period, America is what we know today is America. So yeah, want to keep that in mind. So once again, we're gonna have a couple maps throughout the presentation. So once again, periodization. So you want to know. So this is the early modern era. So it's not yet the modern era where we see the industrial revolution, the machines. No, this is just the early modern era. It's like a shift from the classical era where used to be like spears and fighting and plagues. Now this is where technology starts to become more starts to emerge further, where it starts to technological innovations start to blossom here. So we have five major players here, major events connecting to religion at least. Of course, there's a lot more going on, but we're focusing on religion here. We're focusing on the cultural theme of the AP World course. So first, this age of exploration. America meets Europe. Once again, Columbus, all those Spanish conquistadors, Hernan Cortez, Pizarro. We'll see that. Once again, this is just going to be an overview, so don't worry, it's not going to be a full blast lecture. Let your teachers do that. So next, we have the Protestant Reformation. We have our man Martin Luther here, where Christianity, as you remember, it may have split into two before. It's going to split even further because of religious differences. We're going to go over Africa and China. on how Islam and Christianity expands over in those regions. We're gonna go over the Ottomans versus the Safavids, where the Islamic empires are in conflict with each other, and I call it the family feud because um, they're pretty much from the same like roots of Islam. They're just fighting over like the branches and of course politics and political authorities. So um, last but not the least, Southeast Asia. We're gonna briefly touch a new religion called Sikhism. And even as for me last year, we didn't really go over these in depth. So I'll help you guys over that. So the ones in bold, so like Protestant Reformation, Ottomans versus Safavids, and Sikhism, those two are actually highlighted in the AP Royal like course description. So um, they're ones that you might want to know for like writing an essay or just for context. All right, part one, Age of Exploration, America meets Europe, guys. So we all know that it started with Columbus once again, and he goes meets the natives. So we have two major sides here. So like you can probably tell right now, but we have the two major sides. So one would be the Europeans, and one would be the natives. But let's go over them in depth. So in the blue corners, like in the boxing match, we have the Native Americans. So what were they doing during this time period? So they were in tribes, they were in societies. So like if you went over Unit Zero, like the hunter gatherers, they were not those people. They were nomadic. They followed the food. And and like Cherokees and Tainos, if you know a little bit of U.S. history too, that's good. And some of them were empires that collected taxes, collected tribute in exchange for peace. Like it's like, oh, you give us your money or materials, and we're not going to invade you guys. So those were the Aztecs and the Incas. So but the empires here in Native America wasn't like the empires we knew in the west side of the world, where I mean the east side of the world. Like it's not like Europe or China with those gunpowder. They were like they were empires in terms of size, but not in terms of technology. If you want to compare the two, they were isolated from the world. Um, yes, they were isolated from the world, so they didn't really like leave. They didn't travel past the Atlantic or the Pacific. They were like more centralized, like in terms of geography, unlike the Europeans who traveled all around the world and from Asia to Africa to even beyond the Americas. So, and you want to keep this in mind. The religion was, we call it animism, but basically it refers to like spirits, where they believe it's a polytheistic religion where these people, these natives believe the supernatural. They believe that all things have souls, and they think that, oh, like the rock that I'm stepping on right now, it has a soul. Like the history textbook I'm reading right now, it has a soul, and they believe that spirits can control the forces of nature. So they're like fervently praying for these gods or deities, because if they're getting flooded, that means they're thinking like, oh, we did something wrong. Oh no, what are we doing? So they just pray and pray and pray and pray. So to prevent like flooding, wildfires, droughts. In the red corner, so now we have the Native Americans here. In the red corner, we have the Europeans. I know it's a broad term for everything in Europe, but the first major players here were Spain and Portugal. If you remember, Columbus was from Spain, and there were like some other people from Portugal that followed up afterwards. So compared to like the tribe societies, Europeans were absolute monarchies. So their society was more organized. So we have a king, a queen, like the noble class. The triangle that you always see in hierarchies and AP World. So we have the noble class, the warrior class, the peasant, something like that, something similar to that. So they're well organized. That's the point. And they're wealthy. They're driven by mercantilism and foreign trade. So mercantilism is just a spicy word to like to like describe like it's like a concept where like, oh, the more colonies you have, the better. Hey, Mr. Beckman. So yeah, the more colonies you have, the better. Or export should be more than what you import. It's like an economy term, but basically they're gaining a lot of wealth in terms of gold or raw materials during this time. And it's unlike the Native Americans, who were isolated from the world, they led cross-regional exchanges. Remember, these guys went to Asia, these guys went to Africa, these guys went to Africa. So they were all around the place. And in this case, they went to the Americas, or like how they their original plan was to just find a new trading route. A new trading route. They just wanted three things: God, gold, and glory. So gold for wealth, glories for political clout, basically authority, dominance over the region. But what we're highlighting today is God. So once again, this ties back to religion. They want to spread Christianity. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Once again, that's a religion. It's a monotheistic religion. You believe in life after death, and in the New Testament, which is basically teaching of Jesus and like salvation. Like, oh, if you're doing every action you do here in this planet or like world, like it's gonna count towards like what's gonna happen to you after life. So that's a comparison there. So if you like think about it, like these natives are just chilling out there, and like these Native Americans, I mean these Europeans like are there to convert the people. Like who would prevail? Do you think that the Europeans would just assimilate and just like, oh, you know what, I like a religion. I want to believe in. I believe in my textbook has a soul too. Or are they just gonna forcibly convert everyone? Like, oh, you need to be Christian, or you're gonna go to hell, something like that. So for like 5 seconds, just think like which would prevail. Like would it be like the animism, like the native or indigenous religions, or would it be the Christianity? So just 5 seconds, and then I'll go past that. All right. So hope and that was enough time for reflect. But most natives adopted Christianity, or they were converted either by force or because they were attracted to like the appeal of this concept of God. So that was the option for most of the people. However, some blended the two together. So that's a new thing in this time period. That's one thing you want to keep in mind. We're gonna talk about that word later. So some of these natives were like, I mean, I like worshiping my idols, but I like how there's a God in Jesus, you know. So some of these people were like blended these ideas together, and so they were like, animism plus Christianity equals I wonder. So that blending, we call it syncretism. So that's when you blend beliefs and practice from different religions together. So it's not like you're following one like discrete religion, like just one religion. So like let's say you're doing like half this stuff is based from Christianity, half the stuff is based from like Native American religions. So we call it syncretism. That's just a technical word to describe that. So examples would be once again Christianity, animism, and voodoo in the Caribbean. It's the same thing. So like Native African religion plus Christianity once it spreads there. So that's another example. And Godism, we're gonna go over that real quick in India, but basically in India, this emperor named Akbar just basically like, I mean, I want world something along the lines of like, I want world peace. So you know what? I'll just add elements from each religion: Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, every other religion just called Godism or the divine faith. So all of those examples of syncretism, basically blending. So like when you're mixing together, that's syncretism. All right. So this is an example of syncretism once again. So you see in the left, we have Adam and Eve, the first human biblical couple. So you see this Adam's holding a staff, Eve has a kid, and yeah, there's sun and the moon on the side. And on the right, we have a mythical first human couple created by the Inca god Viracocha. So you can see Viracocha, it sounds like in the Incas. So that's from it's like Native American religion. So you also see pretty much the same picture. So what similarities do you see? I'll just point it out to you. You can see that it's pretty much based on the same concept. So there's the first couple gives life to like all descendants of the earth, something along those lines. And basically, what we're getting here is that as the Europeans like go to America, like they get inspiration the natives get inspiration from the religion of these guys, but they're not fully adopting it. They're just like straight up modifying their own religion based off that. So that's syncretism once again. So, okay, next. However, so syncretism is the thing. So some natives mixed up the things, mixed up these practices. But remember this: those who spread the original religion in the region usually look down on syncretic religions. So if I was a missionary, let's say I'm a Christian missionary, and I go to like modern day Mexico and like convert a couple of natives into like Christianity, and then there's just one guy who like just decided to blend Christianity in his native religion. I would look down on him. I would call him false. That's offensive. Why are you imitating my religion? That's fictitious. It's not even how we Christians do it. So you're going to hell. So basically that's what they're saying. Um so you can see a conflict between Europeans and syncretic natives. You see a conflict between Muslims and syncretic Africans. You'll see it later on. And like if you look at an example here, like an example document, like I just highlighted some words. Basically, this is some guy talking about the practices of the natives, and they basically saying like, oh, there's the town was singing a Christian devotional song, and basically saying that there's a large feather that usually adorns the images for a lady, and it's taken from the church. So like this feather in the altar is taken from the church, and he's wearing it on his head. So like I would call it, if I was a missionary, I would call it disrespectful. And you can see here, the person that officiates at sacrifice sings songs. He's called it diabolical. That's a really negative word. That's a really like if you want to trash talk someone, that's an extreme word to use. Diabolical. So he's calling out, or any European, he's calling out these these heathens or like non-believers because they didn't really obey, like didn't really conform to Christianity. They just like mixed it up. So yeah, Mr. Beckton was saying yes, AP World loves syncretism, so it's worth writing down. So keep a list of like vocab words you don't know, and then you can have it as a cheat sheet, and um you can have a good list at the end of the year. All right, so that's pretty much the age of exploration. Just remember, America meets Europe, syncretism, Christianity, and animism. Part two, we had the Protestant Reformation, and Christian religion splits again. The first one was during the Great Schism back in Unit Zero, where what do you call this? Like the Eastern Orthodox Church splits with the Roman Catholic Church. So we'll see another like a repeat of that. History repeats itself again. So 16th century. So this is like a time period. So we're at the 1500s. So we're at the start of the time period. The church and Western European governments often work together. So you can see that in the hierarchy technically. So it's usually the king or the queen. Then it's either the noble. Actually, no. Usually after the king in Europe, it's usually the clergy or the church officials, the pope. Basically, if you're an emperor, you anger the pope, like you're done for. Like there's just one king that just beg for forgiveness in the snow because the pope was like, nah, fam, and basically the emperor is basically powerless. So they had to work together so that the church can get political power and the government gets spiritual blessing or like recognition um by the church, which is very important. It's like how cloud works today. So if you have a church backing you up, you're a really good place. However, this relationship eventually, like the church eventually got way too comfortable with it. So clergy, these priests, these clergy, these lay ministers, they started to get a couple of that greed, corruption, materialism, where they started like just drinking wine or want more money, and they started to abuse their power. They started to neglect their duties. So and Martin Luther and Johann Tetzel, they're both like they're like priests or pastors or friars. This is like a rundown conference. So this like what's the last straw for Martin Luther, if you recognize him. Would it be okay to discuss the views of Dominicans, Franciscans, Cater? Oh, are you talking about like in the Protestant Reformation? If you're talking about cause and effect, I would usually yeah, if they had similar they had similar like elements, and if you have an argument and they have like similar elements, you can use them. But like if they had like like really different I would call this different views. I would rather stick with a compare and contrast argument. But if they had pretty much the same general similarities, then I would go for cause and effect. I usually don't blend two skills together, so yeah. We'll go over that later. So come back to that. So basically during this time, there's this guy named Yon Tetzel, and basically he's selling indulgences. And we're gonna see here how Martin Luther technically started the Reformation, and like summarized in like a mini comic thing. So like Johann like, hey, care to indulge me with your time? Martin Luther, come again, sir. Johann's like, I'm selling some indulgences for your money. So this is so you can see here that he's selling something, and this is like a pattern for like the priests. And Martin Luther, sounds fancy. What does it do? What does it do? Less time in purgatory, baby. And Martin Luther's like, dang, I'm down. Hold up, that's illegal. Okay, so don't take this literally, but basically during this time period, priests were selling indulgences. They were like fast passes to heaven, because usually when you die, you go to purgatory, spend a long time, and then that's where you and then you just wait until you go to the afterlife. But basically, what they're doing here, Yo and Tetzel and the other priests are selling it. They're making like, oh, we're gonna make your time shorter. It's like bail, basically. So like you have to pay to get less time for what do you call this purgatory time. So this was the last straw for Martin Luther. Like he already noticed a lot of corruption and greed and everything else in the church, but this indulgence controversy was the last straw. So he posts his famous 95 thesis, like apparently in like a door of a German church, and he condemns the Roman Church for its corruption, and he's just calling for reform. Like, you got to change, you got to get your act together. And to further like emphasize this, he translates a Bible from Latin, which is like a church language, to German, to a more common language. The reason why he's doing this is so that everyone can understand what the Bible is talking about. Because in Latin, it's just the church officials that like they're basically interpreting it for them. They're basically interpreting it, and then they tell it to the people through their sermons or their masses, and the people are like, yeah, that's what he said. That's what he said. Yeah. But now, when you convert it to German, now everyone can interpret the Bible on their own, and they can see for themselves whether they can see for whether it's whether they agree with the church or not. So just another dimension of this Reformation. Also, like, wait? He had to write all the copies of the Bible by hand. Hey, Peter. All right, wait. He had to write all the copies of the Bible by hand. That's awful. No, the printing press, it's an invention by Gutenberg. So during this time period, like mass production has started for like books, writing. So basically in this case, it helped Luther um, mass produce the Bible, basically. So blue head bottom meme here, yeah, Peter. Okay, so anyways, so the point here is that he's basically starting to let the people know that this is wrong. We got to do something. So in the long run, it led to the Protestant Reformation led to the following. It led to the split of the Western Christianity to two. So this is one thing you need to know. I mean, for context at least. So there's a lot of different interpretations of the Bible due to the printing press. They can read it on their own. They're like, oh, I think that's how the passage went. Then some other guy would be like, not really. I would say it was because of, something like that. And this is where you see the establishment of Protestantism, the Protestant Christianity, the Lutheran Church. And during this time period, there was almost half of the German population. They had laws banning. They had laws banning. They had laws banning Roman Catholicism because they just hated it. They were like, "This is wrong. This is Protestantism is the goat." So they start banning it. And yeah, once again, you want to know this for context or evidence. And I mean, inversely proportional. So Roman Catholicism's influence diminishes because basically everyone's trash talking them right now, and they can't really fight back because it's true. So they had to get their act together for a couple of years until they come back in the Catholic Reformation. But since we're focusing on the Protestant Reformation here, basically their influence diminishes real fast. And we have subsequent new movements. In England, we have the Anglican Church, and we have in France, we have the Calvin Church. All of these are mini reformations are based on this original one. So, like the Anglican Church is basically this guy over here in the picture. Basically, he wants to divorce his wife because this king wants to divorce his wife because she can't bear like a male heir for the throne. But church was like no, and he was just like, you know what? I'm gonna make my own church where we can divorce. So, okay, question for Estelle. Can we use the context of Martin Luther's outside evidence info for DB? Definitely. So, if actually, even if depending on like what your prompt is, but if it's about religion, spot on. You can just go for it. I would say most of the time it will work. So. And you see here on the side, it's a change. So it's a change. The Protestant Christianity expanded, but it split into two. That's a new thing that didn't happen before. I mean, it happened once, but not like every time period. So that's a change. All right, real quick, check for understanding. We have a poll here. Just go to like the check for understanding question. And which of the following is an example of syncretism? Is it A, playing two dudes playing chess? B, Hindu visiting Morocco for trade, C, native praying to both God and Viracocha, or D, a Buddhist reciting a daily mantra. So it's on the polls. Scroll down to check for understanding question, just click, just vote. All right, we have 2 votes in. Oh, wait for like another half a minute. All right, so 5, 4, 3, 2. Ooh, someone voted. Okay, 1. Good job, guys. It is C. So you can see here he's praying. The natives praying to both God and Viracocha. So like you can see a blending there from with Christianity and Native American animism. Great job, guys. All right, now that's part 2. That was the Protestant Reformation. Number 1 was stage of exploration, and now we're going to Africa and China, where we see more glimpses of Islam and Christianity. So, in Africa, it's like pretty much like Native America, where religions were indigenous, basically, like more in like beliefs in nature, and there was Africans, African Americans, I mean, no, Africans believe in the supreme creator God, but they didn't name him. They just call him the creator. And they believe that spirits intervene in human affairs. So once again, that's why they all do the praying, because they don't want calamities, they don't want floods, they don't want wildfires. And another bonus is that they honor their kin after death. So they're really respectful with their dead. So when they bury him, when they from burial to like or if starting from that to the burial, they stay respectful to that. So that persisted for like a couple centuries and decades and centuries from like unit 0. And then we see an expansion of Christianity. So this is where the time period where Christianity and Islam starts to enter the continent. So Christianity in this case was more in sub-Saharan Africa. So if you look at the Africa, like the shape, it's on the left. It's on the left corner. It's like West Africa basically. And they were kind of commissioned by the Portuguese. If you remember, the Portuguese were a major Christian nation back then, so it makes sense. And these Africans had a lot of motivation to adopt to Christianity. One, they could get a political alliance with Portugal, and alliances are good. You want more buddies, more ally, more people to work with. You have a stable commercial trade. Remember, Europe was just very business was booming basically. So they want that. They want more of that wealth flowing with them from north to like Africa. And one notable king, you don't need to know exactly his name, but like for if you want for evidence, basically the King of Congo was one of the major African kingdoms that were Christians. So that's under King Alfonso I. And once again, you see these syncretic cults. You see, it's what I mentioned earlier, briefly mentioned earlier, Christianity and African traditions blended together, and we see like we see here like crosses are the same thing as amulets against spirits. So you see that continuity here. What's an axiom of prominently established Christian? How would these interact with the efforts to the Yes, yeah. The accent was one of the during the post-classical era, yeah, the accent was one of the early established Christian settlement. How many interact with efforts of Portuguese? Oh, Ethiopia. Yeah. I would say that interact with efforts of Portuguese. Are you talking about like how they are connected? Yeah. How they are connected? Yeah. So like Mr. Beckman said, access is East Africa, these events are in West Africa. So um it's more of that it's more of those if your teacher mentioned in class like those camel like those caravans, like camels. So um some Portuguese did like maritime trade with the Africa, like the west tip of the west tip of Africa, like the west coast of Africa, and some did like actually the long term travel from like the Middle East down to um West Africa. But yeah. Okay, so one example of syncretic you need to notice and the Antonia movement. Basically, um, these believers of this movement was like believed that the Congo was a true holy land of Christianity, and basically they hated European Christianity. So it's like a mutual relationship between the Europeans and the syncretic people. They hated each other basically. So pretty interesting. All right. Other than Christianity. Um, Islam was also a thing in Africa. So in while I mentioned earlier that the Christianity was more on the sub-Saharan Africa, Islam was more on West Africa and the Swahili states, so the one on the East Coast. So um, these traders, these missionaries, they actually went like one step further than like those Christians because they established Islamic universities, they established schools dedicated to teach the Quran. Example in like Timbuktu in like the West African coast, they had universities and schools. And once again, it's continuity. We also had syncretism. We had like how Christianity and native African beliefs combine. We also see Islam here, indigenous beliefs, where these Africans believe that, oh wait, Christianity could be magic, and I mean Islam could be like they considered Islam as magic, and they basically like implemented like they still believe in magic, but they like said like social status wise, they said like it's more equality between men and women. So you can see like a mix of those values. And once again, it's a continuity. Like all those devout Muslims who like wanted to either convert like either all or nothing, they were offended. But like, why would you dare to mix the sacred religion of our Lord, something like that? They were like so offended. And one of these groups were the Fulani. Once again, you need to know just for context, they observed a strict form of Islam. So they were like the conservatives. They were like verbatim like the word like from the Quran. So and basically established like they established Islamic states through conquest in West Africa. So you can see a pattern there. It's what you can see a pattern similar to empires where they start state building in sub-Saharan Africa is similar to like how empires back then conquered to gain more converted religions or um, just gain political authority. But in this case, it was more on just gaining more converts in in Africa to trump Christianity, basically. So that was the Fulani. Okay, so now that we know that Africa had like a mix of both Christianity and Islam, now let's go to China. If you remember, probably if you know your dynasties, that China was at this time was Neo-Confucianism. They're way past the point that the original Confucianism. It's about the new. It's about that now, where they still had the original morals and ethics of Confucianism, so like filial piety, like all those five like relationships between student and teacher, between father and son, something like that. But they combined it with the logic and philosophy of Buddhism. So they added more like rational thought and like taking a step back and looking at life to the principles of Confucianism. So you can also see once again self-discipline, filial piety, obedience to rulers. Those continued from the original Confucianism, but that's the dominant religion in this region. Christianity tried to return. So if you remember, 12, 11, 10 to 12, 13, 14th century, there was like this bubonic plague. So it wiped out pretty much a third of Europe. So Christians back then were like, you know what? I mean, because their homeland was being like ravaged, they were like, let's stop Christianity for now. So they stopped for a moment, and then they come back at this century, so like 16th century. And once again, they come back after the plague. And the major group that was here during this time was the Jesuits, where they used European science to win converts. Where they were like, look at this astronomy, look at this astronomy, look at the astronomy we have, look at the math we have. I bet you guys would be interested. So why not just convert to Christianity? You get to learn more about that. So it's like a trade deal or something. And however, while the Chinese were like really courteous, they were really kind. They really tried being polite. They were polite. At the end of the day, only a few converts were attracted because eventually, Christianity was banned after the Pope orders missionaries to stop basically interacting with these Chinese because so remember these were the Jesuits. So at some point, the Jesuits had an argument within not an argument, but like the Franciscans and the Dominicans who are also converting people during this time period in China. They were kind of competing with the Jesuits. They were complaining to the Pope, like, Pope, they're doing Chinese language services. You're talking to them in Chinese. I thought we're supposed to talk with them in English and just let them understand us and just convert them. So like the Pope was like, you know what? Yeah, you're kind of right. So basically he orders the missionaries to like stop empathizing with the Chinese, like because the Jesuits back then were like, oh, we understand you're doing ancestry veneration, so we'll just do it with you for a couple, and then you can just convert you later. So basically, the Pope orders him to stop doing that and just do it like the standard way, which hurt their chances because the Chinese emperor sees this and he was like, I don't know, I don't want none of this. So it eventually gets banned, and we stick with Confucianism. So look at the blue box on the side. That's a continuity. Neo-Confucianism did not change at all. It was still the dominant religion here. So once again, like a recap for like number 1, 2, and 3. Continuity here. Christianity continues to expand. In the Americas, even if at the cost of syncretism. Africa, yes. China, for a certain extent. And they were expand. There were merchants, missionaries, and conquerors helped them expand during this time period. However, while Christianity expanded, what changed is that there was syncretism. They didn't see it beforehand. The missionaries just thought like either they're converted or not, they won't. But now they had to deal with this where, oh no, like this guy is believes in God, but he's doing some worshiping idols things on the side. I don't want that. So now these missionaries had to deal with that problem with syncretism. And once again, Protestant Reformation, Western Christianity splits into two: Roman Catholics and the Protestants. and of course reform movements. Part 4. So now we're pretty much done with Christianity. So now we're talking about Islam. So if you look at today, you would say that Islam would be pretty dominant in the Middle East, and you're right. Because going back in history, during this time period, basically Islam was pretty dominant in the Middle East, quite a part of North Africa, and some other places as minorities. But as you can see here, here's a map. You would just focus on the green and the red. So these two empires, the ones that are mainly fighting in this time period, so they're like Islamic empires. We call these three the gunpowder empires because they were able to harness gunpowder for like their weaponry and their equipment. But the main fighting forces here are these two, the Safavids and the Ottomans. So it's like Islamic family feud. We're gonna see why. So once again, we're gonna do that thing again. In the blue corner, we have the Ottomans. Once again, look at the map. They're in the Middle East area, North Africa, Middle East, like Arabia. So they're over there. And they started off as Turkish nomads. So if you remember, Rome was the thing, or even after Rome, like the Byzantine Empire, and which eventually collapses due to like nomadic invasions from by the Turks. And basically, these Turkish nomads were like some of those these ancestors of those Turkish nomads were some of those people that led to the fall of the Byzantine Empire, like major empires in Europe. And they controlled European trade routes. Arguably, they were one of the reasons why Spain and Portugal had to look for the other way around for a trade route where I had to go to Americas because they don't want to pay like every time that so they controlled these trade routes, right? So they had to pay a um a fine just to get across that. And if you're like a business minded person like that, that's a loss already because you had to every time you go back and forth, you had to pay. So these Europeans had to go back find a trade route. So this is the major thing. You'll see why later. So there's Sunni Islam. So this is a faction of Islam that's we'll talk about later. So that's one of the two. In the red corner, we have the Safavids. They're from Iran. So if you remember in the map, they were like the east of the Middle Eastern the inner Middle Eastern region. And they were more nationalistic, where they always had propaganda for the empire, like, oh, we're the best. They converted Sunnis to Shias, like like mandatory, like you have to, or you're gonna be in trouble, big trouble. And they initially used to be Sunni, but like the founder of this empire, I think I think about Assad or something, but he changes it to Shiite Islam. So these two, just by looking at the contrast, these two are gonna fight a lot. If you look at origin, which we'll talk about later, they're gonna be they're not gonna settle things anytime sooner. So the prize pot, if they're fighting, what's gonna be in the prize if one of them wins? Regional control of the Middle East. If the Safavids beat the Ottomans, then they get control of the Middle East. If the Ottomans beat the Safavids, they get control of Iran, or like they can get moved eastward to like India, Central Asia, and they get national resources. That's a given. Religious superiority, because these two are different sects of Islam. They can get to like flex over the other one, like, oh, we're better than you, and they get expansion. They get to expand. All right, so like a real quick background on the Sunni-Shiite conflicts. Um, let's start with way back Unit Zero. Muhammad dies, so the founder of Islam dies, and it seems to be smooth. Nothing bad's gonna happen, right? Nothing bad's gonna happen. But he dies without a male heir, so there's no one to inherit his potential Islamic empires. So the big question is, who's gonna be next? So So this is where the conflict starts. So one group of followers of Muhammad wanted only someone from Muhammad's family to become his successor. So they wanted basically like, oh, if you're a grandson of Muhammad, then you can probably be it. If you're a neighbor of Muhammad, you can't because you're just neighbors. Like it's not like you're a noble. So they're basically an ancestry. And these are what we know today as the Shiites. So they're more like you have to be a direct descendant of Muhammad. to become the next leader of in the tribe or like one of the empire. So that's the Shiites. Now another group of followers were like, we're fine with any leader as long as they're capable, as long as they can do it. You can just so be it. So they're more merit based. So like the Mongols or any other empire like the bureaucracy, China, where they're based on like actual skills than like nobility or social status. So this is what we know today as the Sunnis. So some of you may gravitate towards one group, some of you may gravitate towards the other, but like these scenes, since these two have like fundamentally opposing principles, they would like throughout history they would just continue to oppose themselves, and this Ottoman Safavid conflict is gonna like intensify that political competition. So you know that they're beside each other, and sure, I mean empires can be buddy buddy, but for the most part, they were like, yeah, you know, you're taking over my resources. I need that. Get out of the way. So they were more like that. So political competition, and it just happened that they happened to be of the different sects of Islam. So that just intensified the conflict. It just made it things worse. So one story was that so like the leader of the Safavid Empire once again they made mandatory conversions to Sunni Islam from Sunni Islam to Shiite Islam, and on the other side the Ottomans also persecute the Shiites, and at some point they invade the Safavids, and it blew up. It was a huge battle. It's a huge battle on Chaldiran. You need to know this once again just for context. So eventually, so the Ottomans had foot cannons, they had firearms, and the Safavids were like, "Nah, fam, we're just gonna use our horses." So you can tell which one's winning. So the Ottomans won for a moment, and they were able to occupy the capital, but they didn't have enough resources to destroy the entire empire. So eventually they ended in a draw, and they just continued fighting up to the 20th century, which is like 1900. So this is not going to stop anytime sooner. And like how it did for Christianity, when you look at Islam, it also expanded from Africa to Arabia. So remember, we did trade. We talked about Africa and how like syncretism formed, like even some tribes converted to Islam. So that's a thing, and then they expand to Arabia with I have the Ottomans and the Safavids, and ultimately even the Mughals, because they were Islam too. So like South Asia. And Islam was used to justify conquest by the Fulani, once again in Africa, where they were like, you know what, we're expanding because we want to expand influence of Islam. We want more converts to come in. We want more conversions. And it might not seem like it, but it's a continuity. Ever since Muhammad's death, Unit 0, we're already at Unit what? 1, 2, 3, Unit 2 or 3. I mean, period 2 or 3, and it's still continuing. They still hate each other, and that's not going to stop at any time sooner. So that's a continuity. However, what changed, similar to Christianity, syncretism happened. So, once these interactions happen, once again, we see an overlap. We see a blending with with indigenous religions. All right, so that's if I'm going too fast, just let me know in the chat. So that's pretty much the Ottoman Safavid conflict, where they had different ideologies, therefore they fought in terms of politics and religion. So last we have South Asia with Sikhism. So South Asia, I'm pretty much talking about India. So remember the Mughals? If you look at the map, let's see. Here, you see the one in purple? Those are the Mughals. And they were Islamic too. And let's see, they were Islamic too, but they were from northern India. Unlike they were near the Middle East. And the one thing you need to know is that they also had syncretism. Yeah, it's a thing for every empire, but they call it divine faith. I mentioned earlier under Akbar the Great, where this guy just didn't want conflict to resolve differences between subjects. He just combined every aspect of religion, hoping to, appease everyone. where you let's add a sprinkle of Christianity here. Let's add a dash of Islam. Let's have some Hinduism here. Let's have some I don't know Buddhism. You know, so basically he combined all of these religions. So everyone can like coexist peacefully. And one mini combo is Sikhism. So basically, and all you need to know is that this resulted from the interactions between Hindus and Muslims in India. And later on, you'll see later on that there's going to be much conflict later on. They're going to be like religious conflict later on, but they tried to coexist. So you can see here they tried to make a combo like religion called Sikhism. So you see that they tried. So the difference between Sikhism and like Hinduism or Islam is that it rejects the caste system. You remember India had a really rigorous caste system. If you were born to be a street sweeper, you're gonna be a street sweeper till the rest of your life. But Sikhism gives believers the opportunity to like get out of that destiny. If you're a sweet sweeper, you could probably be a noble if you try hard enough. It's not like you're to stay stuck there. So that's what they're trying to promote. Monotheism. It's like Islam. You can say that there's like an Islamic element there because Islam is monotheistic and Sikhism is monotheistic too. And this picture is actually a place of worship called the Gurdwaras. So it's just some additional tidbit to add there. All right. Any questions? All right. I see the conversation here. I think it's settled. Thank you, Mr. Beckman. Okay, if there's no questions here. We're gonna go to the practice questions here. So you can go to the polls. There are like 6 other polls after the ones you guys filled in already. So you already guys started. Okay, actually I don't know that's real. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of seconds to read question number 1 and then answer using the poll. So basically, we have a painting here. We have a fresco here of the Battle of Chaldiran. So remember the Ottomans and the Safavids. So which continuities described by this fresco? Was it the use of architecture? Was it syncretic belief systems? Was it more interactions between empires through like rivalries or new religions and conflicts within them? So you go down multiple choice MCQ number 1 down that poll and put your answer. All right, I'll give like 15 more seconds. I see 1 person voting A, 2 for C, 1 for D. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, good job, guys. Whoever said C, you're right. It sounds really technical. It's intensification of interactions between empires. But honestly, the key word that jumped out at me was religious and political rivalries. Because as you remember, as you recall, they were rivals. They were political rivals. They were religious rivals. So you can already if you're not a process elimination guy, you just want to jump in, just feel free to do so. And I could have picked D, but I was thrown off. But I realized that there's one word there that made it wrong. It was new religions. Islam was new. It was here for like thousands of years. So at this time, no, not thousands, but like hundreds of years by 1450s. So that rules it out. So good job, guys. Let's see. Yeah, C. All right, number 2. The conflict depicted in the fresco is most likely fought between which factions? If you guys listen, you'll get this like easy, quick. Sedentary tribes, land-based empires, merchant groups, or interregional superpowers with differing ideologies. Oh yeah, Mr. Beck can also put a link in the image. All right, number 2. I see 1 person voting for A, ever B, and 2 for D. Actually, no, 1 or 2. Okay. I'll do this quick so we can go through every. I'll send the slides. I'll send a link to the slides later. So, but once we're done with this. So, all right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Actually, this is a tricky question. So yes, I like the reasoning behind there. You're picking between 2 or 4. I mean B or D, but the answer here is actually B, which is land-based empires. But the real reason why, because what makes D wrong is that I put interregional. So as you remember, Iran and the Middle East were actually in the same region, like the Middle Eastern region. So if when you're talking about interregional, we're talking about, let's say, the Americas and India, or Africa and France. So you can see there's a huge difference in distance there. But we're just saying interregional superpowers, so you can rule it out. So it would be B, yes. Sedentary tribes, no. Merchant groups, no. It's. I mean, both empires, the Ottomans, Safavids, were land-based empires. Um, it may not be the best answer, but once you realize that there's something wrong with the other one, then it can be the best answer. So this is why you got to be careful when you do multiple choice questions. Don't speed run it. All right, next we have Catholic or imperial forces stormed the Protestant city of Magdeburg. So the manager sourcing would most likely agree with the following individuals. So basically, like who's the guy that would like if you're like you were to ask some guy to draw this, he would draw this exact thing. Like if you when I'm giving too many hints, but let's think about bias. When they say sourcing, they have appeal, point of view, and bias. Those are two key things you want to know. So MCQ number 3, we have 3 votes for C. All right, 10 more seconds. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to really seem like I'm speeding it up, but like, I mean, you guys are getting it. So if you don't get it, you can always reach out in the chat. So I can stay for a couple longer. All right, so 1 for A, 5, last call, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so the answer here is C. So remember how I talked about bias? So if I was a Protestant, and if you look at the annotation above, it's a Protestant city of Magdeburg. So if I was a Protestant, they're invading my city. Most of the time, like you're probably in denial that you lost. Like if you're in the game, like if you're a basketball game, your team lost, you're like they didn't lost. It'll take you a while to like digest the fact that you lost, right? So that's the same thing here. So you can rule out the A and D because product they won't really like openly like, oh yeah, our city was burning, we don't really mind that, there were things. I wish things were like that, but not really. You can rule out B because it's completely irrelevant, so it would be C because it would imagine some guy was really hyped up like, yeah, we invaded the city, we set those things in fire, something like that. Like some guy was really hyped up. So good job. All right, number 4. So we have a painting here we have an image here about a Virgin Mary and a child, Christ child. So it's best seen as evidence of which of the following is it: success of Crusaders in East Africa, emergence of syncretic religions, or migration of Bantu peoples, or the lasting image of Christianity. This was actually from the course description of the last year's AP World curriculum. So at first I didn't like the wording of the question, but I bet you guys are gonna breeze through it. So MCQ number 4 poll. We have 1 vote for C and 1 vote for D. I mean 2 votes for D. All right, 5 more seconds. All right, so let's reveal the answer. It's yeah, that's what I was mentioning earlier. Like I don't like the wording because if I just look at the picture, I would say it would be C. So like the emergence of secret religions, um if you let's see. Yeah, I mean if I was a teacher, I would throw this question. What would you say, Mr. Beckman? But yeah, if I was an AP student, honestly, I would pick C. So I get your reasoning, but it would definitely not be D because it would not be migration of bound to peoples, or B, because you don't see East Africa. But yeah, that's the thing. So you need, this is one of those questions where you need to know historical evidence. So I would have gotten it wrong. So honestly, but um it would be the last thing. If you know that the Ethiopians like spread during like Christianity spread to Ethiopia during the Byzantine Empire, it would during the in Christianity spread to the Byzantine Empire, you'd probably know it. But fair enough, fair point. So yeah, the key is knowing that Ethiopia has a very old Christian traditions. Genevieve, of course I don't know it. Let's see. Actually, give me one sec. Talk about this slide, the sourcing. Actually, yeah. Okay. Yeah, number three without the answer. So yeah, if you knew that Ethiopia was never colonized, it would help too. So, you probably at this point probably oh, four without the answer. Sorry. Okay, so yeah, if you knew that Ethiopia wasn't colonized, actually, I knew that by like the period like 750 to 950. So I would keep this question till later. So um yeah, but good try, guys. So this one though, you'll get this question for sure. So we have a picture of a cross here, a female figure from Western Africa. What does he represent in the period 1450 750? Do you see a spread of Ethiopian cultural traditions? Do you see a Columbian Exchange? Do you see religious syncretism? Or do you see the intensification of religious conflicts and rivalries? MCQ number four. No, five poll. I see three people voting B. I'll call last call five. No, I'm not gonna count down. Like that's too stressful, honestly, for me. So okay, we have three for B, one for C. All right, five, four, three, two, one. It is C. Let's see. B was the influence of the Colombian. Okay, yeah, you can kick off A and D. But let's see, the influence of Columbian Exchange on artistic traditions. So the Columbian Exchange was primarily between, yes, at some point, yeah, between Europe, the Americas, and Africa. But Africa was more about slave trade. It was more about kidnapping slaves to be sold for the Americas. It wasn't about spreading religion. So that's the thing about Columbian Exchange. Sometimes, like when you're like, oh, I mean, it happened there, so it should work. But there are times where history doesn't work like that. So Columbian Exchange is more strictly about slaves and trading Europeans trading weapons for their own use. So it wasn't about religion. So, but yeah, it would be syncretism though. So yeah, okay. I'll just go over this while I talk. So basically, here's a document here showing a Protestant propaganda image showing the Pope and the Ottoman Sultan as devil. So it's like a political cartoon, and so you can see here that basically they look like hideous. They look like monsters. So they were asking, if you ever asked identify one aspect of the source of the document, they were asking like the point of view of the guy who drew this, who basically who illustrated this. So you can say that it's someone who is against the Pope, because if you were buddies with the Pope, why would you show him as a devil? Like, why are you backstabbing him? It doesn't make sense, right? So history is pretty much straightforward for the most part. So um it would be like, oh, the author of the document views the Pope and the Ottoman Sultan as negatively, as shown when they use him as devils. So you can just stop at that. You just need the answer. Next, we have identify, explain one change in the Roman Catholic Church in the 16th century. So, what do you remember about the Protestant Reformation? The Roman Catholic change, it's split into two. So these last two questions, they're more about historical evidence. So, what you know outside of this, outside of the like outside of like given evidence to you. So you may know that the Roman Catholic Church split into two during the Protestant Reformation, which is during the 16th century. So it would be like, oh, we can say that, oh, it's split into Roman, the original Roman Catholic faction and the Lutheran Church or the Protestant Church. You can say that. They explain how that changed the Roman Catholic Church dynamics in the 16th century. Like, oh, led to worse relations between the two. You know, you have to overcomplicate it. Don't write a lot. I mean, you can write a lot, but just write enough for your arguments. Yeah, enough for to get the point. Because if you go extra, you don't get extra credit, so it's not worth it. So, all right, last one. Identify and explain one continuity in the Roman Catholic Church in the 16th century. It would be tricky at this point because you're like, wait, can something change and continue at the same time? Doesn't make sense. But eventually, just don't overthink. Just go with the flow. So like, what's the most obvious part about the Roman Catholic Church in the 16th century? It didn't die off. So the Roman Catholic Church, ever since like 60, no, like since like zero before BC until like 2019, it's still here, right? So that means that the Roman Catholic Church persisted despite challenges posed by the Protestant Reformation or any other divisions between the church back then. But you got to be very specific because it's just asking the 16th century here. So just say like, oh, the Roman Catholic Church persisted despite the challenges posed by the Protestant Reformation. You can stop there. You can add an explanation sentence, like one or two, and like add a couple of evidence, like talk about like what happened afterwards. You can talk about the Catholic Reformation, something like that. But that pretty much answers the question. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So going back, do you guys have any final questions? Don't worry, if you think I went too fast, you can always view the which is something if you're of, like, you can always view the replay, or I'll email the slides later on with you guys along with some good resources. Like there's one good resource in Sikhism if you want to read more about that, because we just glossed over it. Like we just gave an overview about it. But that's pretty much presentation. Any questions? Last call. All right, so that concludes my presentation, my stream on changing religions. Hope you guys learned a lot. I hope you guys learned about Islam, more about Christianity, more about Sikhism, more about the continuities, what continue, what change, like all those stuff. At least you got a better grasp of things. At least you got some good, I don't know, multiple choice practice, and hope really helped, guys. So see you soon, guys. Don't forget we have some streams on DBQs. So bye bye.